What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Vince Moiso here, and I am with my partner here, Scott DeLong, for the CEO Podcast. We are in our 5th season.
Season 5, Episode 1.
Episode 1 here. Cool. Yeah, pretty cool, and we're excited to get back going. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus, so we've had some time off to reflect on a lot of different things. And I think what we wanted to talk about today was interesting topic. So it's what we learned growing up. About business, about life, about what the future held versus what we've learned and what that turning point maybe was in each of our lives.
Yeah, I definitely have stories surrounding that. And both of us grew up with athletes, right? So we had, I'm going to suggest that your experience wasn't that much different, right? Hard-ass coaches that would push and drive and I thrived in it. I loved it. In fact, the coaches that I had that were like that, I'm more favorable to them than some of the guys, the nice guys, because I believe that's what it took to do so. So, and when I was growing up, you're several years younger than I am, but when I was growing up, if you had a difference with the coach, you had to deal with that. Dad wasn't going to do it for you. And that's a completely different...
Certainly not to the extent today. I mean, having kids, I think that's an interesting point you bring up. And growing up in the sports world, or even my younger daughter who was heavy into theater and music and singing. And I don't care what it is, but there's a lot. It certainly feels like, as a parent, a lot more helicopter parents today than there ever were when we were growing up. Because I don't remember, when I was playing football, baseball, basketball, there was a little bit of that going on, but certainly not as much as what we're seeing today.
So I was given my dad was just suck it up and deal with it. He's the coach; he knows what he's doing, kind of attitude. And I actually have a story. When I was coaching high school baseball, it was freshman, and had a great group of kids, right? And had this parent come on the field one day after practice, and he said, my son normally hits third. I had him hitting fifth. My son normally hits third in all the travel ball that he plays. And I said, yeah, okay. He's a shortstop, not a third baseman. You got him at third. And I said, it's interesting. So tell you what, why don't you have your son come and talk to me about that? I said, that would be great. And he goes, yeah, no problem. But he really should be hitting third. And he just kept going. And I said, honestly, have your son come and talk to me. This is going to be a good lesson for him. He could learn a little bit about how to deal with adults. And he went on one more time. And he just said, but he's really a 3-hole hitter. And I said, I'm not going to hurt your son. I want to help teach him something, right? So there is a different generation. I didn't have that growing up. So I had to suck it up. And actually, my first job out of college was very similar to that. I had a boss that was just tough. He was just hard-nosed, command and control style leaders, what I ended up calling it. And I did well in that atmosphere as well. So I assumed that was the right way to lead.
How many of you can really relate to this? I mean, if you think of it this way, because we talked about this before, right? When we have an episode on coaching and how to get a coach. And I find it funny because really ultimately what we're talking about here is, at what point did you have a mentor? How many mentors did you have as you were growing up? Where were the mentors? Where were they coming from? And, ultimately, what'd you learn from all of that? And imagine, like as I hear you saying that, as we go through most of our life, we get into even our 20s for those of us that, lucky enough like you and I to continue our careers and play sports in college. So you spend the majority of your life with so much mentorship and coaching, and then all of a sudden it just shuts off. And you're just supposed to go out in the world and figure shit out
on your own,
on your own, which is kind of funny because That's what we're talking about.
So the mentorship even started. Well, you had an older brother too, right?
Yeah.
That's your first mentor.
Yeah, dad.
And then dad, the coach,
brothers, sisters,
all of that kind of stuff. And then when you get out of school and you got your first job, you are on your own, right? It's like you got to swim in the deep end.
Well, certainly there's something to be said about the fact, and this is fact, your environment and your experience within that environment is and has shaped you. Definitely. It will shape you, and you've really got to pay attention. I mean, I wish I was paying attention. I mentioned this actually in my book. In the first part of my book, I talk a lot about I had so many great mentors around me, and I didn't know what mentorship was.
I didn't call it that either.
I didn't understand what it was, and I had siblings. I certainly had teachers. I had great coaches, and I had a lot of people that were willing to mentor me. And I didn't realize through high school, especially, that all you had to do was ask. And it was really simple. If you ask questions, ask a lot of questions, it's amazing the answers that you're going to get and the help that you're going to get. And I never did that.
So through high school, you say through high school, I went a little step further. So I was teaching college courses and business courses, and I was telling the kids to get out in the streets and go interview businesses. And I said, and I gave them this clue. I said, well, how do you approach these guys, and why are they going to want to talk to me? All you got to say is, I'm in a college class and I'm looking for some support. I'm looking for some help. And old people will talk to young people, right? They just will. Oh, come on, son, let me guide you through this. Or for the young ladies, the same thing.
Even
so it doesn't
college.
Stop in high school.
No, it doesn't.
Frankly,
you're great.
It doesn't stop now, but I didn't know that.
No. See, now I know. I mean, you and I both know that, and now I seek it. I love it. I welcome it anytime that I can get some knowledge or I can learn from somebody else, and I'm just in that constant learning mode, and I've embraced it. But it took me a long time to get to that point. Yeah. Even in college, Scott, I had just some incredible mentors, and they were mentoring me, and I was soaking it in for sure, but I still just didn't realize that what I had was a mentor, and that I could have taken it to a whole other level and learned so much more. But the key is, and you said this, right? It's a little humility to do this, asking for help. Ask for help. Yeah, you got to ask for it. I talk about this too, and we've mentioned this in previous podcasts, is you don't know what you don't know. And I spent a lot of years beating myself up over, God, I wish I would have done this, or, I could have done this different, or I would have done that. But reality is I didn't know what I didn't know. Even some of the mentors that I had in my life didn't know what they didn't know either, right? So there was no environment there that was going to teach me that thing that I needed to know at that given time to make that decision, right? So it's hard to recognize.
I'm thinking formulas, right? And I wish there was a formula to tell me how to do. No, there's not.
Well, I stopped beating myself up over that, and I think that's another thing to overcome, is that you can't put undue pressure on yourself that, oh, wow, I wish I would have done things a little bit different. Now, once you open your eyes to mentorship or what's around you and the resources around you, it's amazing what can come from that. In fact, my niece is in town, and we were talking a lot about who you surround yourself with. Yeah. And I think once your eyes become open to coaching, mentorship, and learning, then you start to realize, oh, wow, I think maybe I need to change the people that I'm running with right now, because you realize you may not be learning anything from them. And then you start to create relationships where you can learn more and more. I think
what creates those relationships? Comfort, getting comfortable in this environment. These friends, mentors, whatever you're going to talk about, right, aren't pushing you anymore. And that gets comfortable, makes me feel pretty good that I know what I'm talking about. And I don't, right? I don't know what I don't know. So that's why you need to look for new communities and new mentors, if you will, to challenge you.
What's the adage? When you're the smartest person in the room, time to find another room.
Yeah, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah,
certainly.
There's no question about that.
But it feels good to have all these other people looking up, but it's not doing me a darn bit of good being that. So I'll do a little plug here, but we've just created a new organizations called The Circle that is designed for that.
Yeah.
And basically what this group is, very similar but different to Vistage and EO and YPO and other business groups. A little bit different format that we're going to be using, but the concept is so cool. Getting 10 people in a room, 10 smart, whether they're educated through the typical education or the school of hard knocks, it doesn't matter, but have done well in their businesses, right? And getting to share experiences, which is certainly an EO concept. And as the facilitator of this group, I learn every bit as much as anyone else in the room gets to. And it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's just really a cool thing to do. So look for places like that in your life would be my biggest advice, whether it's EO, YPO, Rise Up Kings, one of our friends, Mark Kohler's program, the Fast Attack, right? Getting around other smart people. And don't go to a spot looking for a lecture. Right? That's not where you're going to learn. You're going to learn with the sharing experience. So, which is completely different than how I grew up. Back to the
totally is because what you're talking about is your peer group, right? And then choosing that peer group wisely, and then being able to leverage that peer group and have them leverage you. So it is an opportunity for you to pay it forward just as much, and know that your experiences are equally as important as anybody else's, and so your ability to share those experiences with others are going to learn a ton. And so getting into a group like the Circle or like Entrepreneurs Organization, being in a forum, gosh, that's like, it was a whole other level for me when I discovered that.
Well, and you and I are both coaches. We do one-on-one coaching, which I'm a big fan of. Like, I like getting it for myself. I like doing it as well. But I'm a big believer in these groups. The small group
Well, EO Forum, anyone in EO, you know this, you were in EO, and if you ask anyone in EO, they'll tell you that the number one part of their experience in EO is what? Forum.
Right. It's not getting up there listening to some guy lecture.
No.
So that's what's different from my learning experience now than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I went to school, I took notes, I passed the classes, all lecture-based kind of stuff. But what I found is that the experience share, kind of what started this podcast in the first place, right? You're talking about what you do, and I talk about what I do, is going to make us both smarter.
Yeah.
And if there's another person in the room, we just get a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference between then and now. But do you want to go into the transition? What made you recognize that, right? Where was the point where you said, quit being the smartest guy in the room, get into a different room, quit doing this whole command and control leadership thing that you grew up with, right? What was your transition period?
Yeah, to me, I was mid 30s, and I was really just going, is this all there is? Is this what life has to offer? Is this what business has to offer? It can't be. Like, this just can't be it. There has to be more. And then I really just started searching. And so that was the point, I'd say, like my early to mid 30s, I started reading like crazy. I started getting book recommendations, and I'm reading. And then you start to hear about, guys like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, who are just plowing through 4 books a month. And, and I, at the time, I'm thinking to myself, how the hell, like, I can barely get through a book every, 2-3 months. And how are these guys plowing through 4 in a month? Like, it just seemed so crazy to me. And then, I'm watching, all of a sudden I'm seeing other guys that have multiple businesses, and they're doing all these different things. And I'm thinking to myself, it's just mind blowing. I'm thinking, like, how are these guys doing that? And I wanted to find out where that was all coming from. What was the source of that? And so then I started to, then I just started doing my own research, and I'm running into groups like Vistage, and I'm running into these other groups. And I went to a Vistage meeting, and I went to another networking group. Then I just started going to these networking functions. I started getting invited to these networking functions. Sooner or later, I had a friend that introduced me to EO. And I went, ironically, I told you it was your Chapman, was
Mini University?
That's it. Yeah, Mini University. And that was the first EO event that I went to. And I went to that, and I said, I looked around the room, and said, these are my peeps. Like, this is it.
The quality of the people.
This is it. This is what I've been looking for. And I want to learn from all these people. I want to be like all of these people. I want to understand what all of these people in this room are doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it. And that was it. So from there on, you know, it's been an 8-year journey. So I've been a part of EO for, well, this is my year number 9. So I'm in my 9th year with EO, and it's been an incredible journey. The best part about it was, I would say, the first 2 years was drinking through a fire hose and was amazing. So like the radical change in my life in a short amount of time was truly amazing.
So let's talk about Mini University for a minute, because that kind of was a transition point for me as well. Created this program where we went on a college campus, and we had a keynote and lunch and all of that. And then we had tracks, 3 different tracks. Right?
Yep.
So you'd have, if you wanted to go to this track, or that track, you had a speaker in each of those rooms, and there was 3 series of those, right? Great. So you take all your notes and you think you're going to go implement all this stuff, and you just don't. It just doesn't work like that. It's drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
The power behind this, and I'm going to tie this back into the book reading thing in a minute here. The power behind that is, when you go to these workshops and conferences and courses and whatever, learn all you can from whoever's lecturing and talking.
Yeah.
Great. Take your notes and then go talk to someone about it. What did you learn? What did you get out of that? What was your key point out of that? Tell me more about that. You know, how are you planning on implementing that? Having conversations with these things will cement the learning with you. So I'm going to tie that into how I read a book. The same kind of way. How do you read 3 books a month? 1 chapter a day. A book's generally 10 chapters. You read 1 chapter a day. It takes 30 minutes to read a chapter. I mean, I've timed this stuff. 30 minutes to read a chapter. You read 1 a day. At the end of that chapter, do whatever exercises are in the back of that chapter, whatever the author put down there. And if they didn't, here's a really simple one. Something we call the concept matrix is, what was the most important thing I got out of that chapter? What do I think the author meant by that? How can I impart that in my life right now? And just write it out. Then go talk to somebody.
Well, Audible is another option for books. And what is funny, I'm smiling as you're saying that, because then when you look at Audible, and I've learned to put it on, I think I have it on like 1.5x speed.
1.2.
Yeah, something like that. So which speeds it up even more. But then the book, you'll notice it's only 4 hours of listening. So if you, to your point, if you just listen for 30 minutes at a time, you know, within a couple of sessions, you've read the entire book. So
I do Audible when I do road trips. I go to Lake Havasu. It's 5 hours. I can get through a long book on the way up and back. And I get to hear it and I get to experience it. But I'm telling you, reading that book 1 chapter at a time and then doing the exercise at the end of that chapter was so much more powerful for me.
I agree.
In fact, quite often, that's how I find a book, is I get it on Audible and I liked it. So then I'll go and read it I'll buy the book and read it 1 chapter at a time. You get through 3 books in a month that way, right? So how do you do it? So 3 books in a month, 36 in a year.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to give up a half an hour.
That's it.
So go learn something from some smart person that did something.
Well, it's a total game changer. I mean, you know, look at on the shelf back here, you know, and I've got,
and that's I've got one of the shelves. There's some way back over there too.
I'm the same at home. And I'll tell you, is like I get asked all the time now about, hey, what are your top 5? What are your top 10? You know, if you could just give me 2 recommendations right now, you know, on a whatever topic, you know, what are the top 2 books? And I love giving the recommendations, because now I'm so well read, and I constantly want to read books. I want to learn more. And I love every nugget that I take away from all of those books. That's become a habit.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, Atomic Habits. Yeah, we love it. But, you know, that's the point, is like some of these things, they just become habit because that's who you're hanging out with, right? And that rubs off. So I want to ask this. This is my question. What did you learn growing up? So like, as you started to enter adulthood, so call it going to college, maybe right after college, what was your mindset then from your upbringing?
Suck it up. Honestly, it really was suck it up. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You can do anything that you want to do. I was always given that, no question. But don't cry, don't whine, don't complain, don't whatever was my mindset. And in fact, even after my first job, now I had my first businesses that I was 2 or 3 jobs, but then I started businesses. That was the same lessons that I was imparting. You said in your mid-30s, I didn't get this stuff till I was 50. The transition piece, the stuff that we're going to be talking about in a minute. But mine was suck it up. And I'm sorry to say these words, don't be a pussy. Those words were used.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah.
Those words were used.
Maybe not so appropriate today.
Not so appropriate. Probably wasn't so appropriate then.
It wasn't appropriate then either.
But those are the words that were used, and that was the mentality that I was taught. That if you want something in life, you got to go get it. Now, I still believe that you've got to go get it, no question about it. But the whole, I was watching a Grant Cardone YouTube the other day, and I had to put a remark and challenge it a little bit. But he said, hey, don't give me your ADD or your OSP or your, like, whatever. You got your mental health problems, fine. You use those for excuses. That is so friggin' insensitive to be able to dismiss what other people are going through.
Yeah.
And so I had to say something about it. Now, Grant's got more airplanes than I have, bigger houses, and he's got better trophies and all that. No question about it. And it works for him. But that's not the way to be a leader. It might be a way to be a solopreneur, someone that's going to go challenge yourself to go do that. If that's what gets under your skin, great, do that. But I got to tell you, it is not an appropriate response if you want to lead others. There are real issues in life. So that's one of the 3 principles that I'm working on and trying to live by is empathy.
Yeah.
We need to understand that people are going through things. They are. And they can't always just suck it up, and they can't always just pull themselves up by the bootstrap, that they need some support. And they haven't learned what Vince and I have learned to do is ask for help.
You know, it's ironic. So as I think about what it is that I learned growing up, and so I was the youngest of 5, separated by a decade. My oldest brother's 16 years old. So by the time my parents got to me, I was, kind of an only child growing up. Not that I didn't have family around all the time. I did and loved it. But at the same time, there was this fierce independence that was created around that because my parents were kind of like, yeah, you'll figure it out. Right. And so I got my own rides to school, or I had to ride my bike. I mean, like I was going to football practice in full gear on my beach cruiser, holding my helmet and my shoulder pads. And it was get yourself to practice, get home on your own. I was walking to school back and forth. You get it. Right. Yeah. So then by the time I got to high school, it was like I had to find my own rides. I had to figure it out. I had a job, from 8th grade delivering newspapers. I had 2 newspaper routes. I would get up at 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I'd hammer that out, go to school, go to practice, come home, do it all over again the next day. Even through high school, I always held a job, played 3 sports. So I became fiercely independent. And what that created, while I'm actually appreciative of that, very appreciative of that, because it definitely created the hard work that I totally believe in. And I'm a very hard worker.
And resilience and other things.
Resilience, all of the perseverance, all of those traits that I absolutely love and relish, and I'm appreciative for that. At the same time, it was a detriment to me because I have a hard time receiving help from others. I have a hard time receiving compliments from others. I have a hard time when, people go to pay for dinner.
Receiving gifts.
Right. Receiving gifts is not one of my strengths. All these things are really hard for me because of that just innate, fierce independence. And so we have to realize, I bring that up because we have to realize just how powerful that upbringing and that main thing that it is that you learn when you're young. And you have to kind of unwind that. So as I got into my late 30s and I started down this path of self-development, I thought, oh shit, when you start to unpack these things, you go, wow, I've got a lot of unwinding to do if I'm going to get over this. And to your point, become the leader that I want to become.
So I had all those same traits, right? Didn't like getting gifts, didn't like getting compliments. I hated when I didn't get a compliment, but I didn't receive them very well either, right? All of those things were very similar. So a big transition for me was to learn 2 words. Thank you. This is the appropriate response.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Last night we were at an event and I hosted a table at this charity event. And And one of my guests said, "Oh no, you should be sitting here so you have a better view of the stage." And I finally just looked at her and said, "Do you understand what the word guest means? Like, enjoy yourself. Just be a guest and accept it. It's okay. It's a gift." It's hard for people to learn that because of that upbringing. Right? No one's going to give you anything in life.
Yeah.
Well, when they do, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right? They're not doing it because they're hoping for some quid pro quo. Usually, most of the time, they're not. Right? They're doing it because they want to. They thought it was a gesture that they wanted to offer to you.
That's exactly
whether it's
right.
a compliment, a gift, or whatever.
That's
right?
exactly right.
Yeah. So honor them for honoring you.
Yeah.
And you do that by simply saying thank you.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, but it was so hard to do. I would always, no. That whole thing, I was good at doing that.
Powerful, though.
It made me look silly not learning how to accept a gift.
No, so and
made the person feel small for offering it to me.
It is. Well, and you think about how many times, I think about this, how many times that, and I think of it not just a physical gift, I think of the gift of mentorship and the gift of learning and knowledge that was attempted to impart on me, and I didn't receive it.
So there's another gift that I've found and had to reframe it to make it worthwhile and be able to accept it. The gift of critique, the gift of feedback.
Yeah.
It really is, right? I mean, most of us,
you win or you learn.
Most of us, when we get some critique, we get defensive and we say, but the reason I'm doing that is, and we do all this defensive thing, rather than say, I don't see it like, I didn't see it like that. Can you tell me a little bit more? Thank you.
Right.
Like, that was so cool.
Simple language. And that's great feedback. Tell me more.
You should see the people when, like, I'm in this new group. It's about public speaking, and there's really good speakers in there. And so I did a little thing the other day, and at first they said, "Oh, that was great." No. Don't tell me it was great. Tell me where I can improve, because if it was great, I don't need to improve, and I know I need to, right?
Yeah.
And the first time I said, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Their faces just lit up because I was honoring them for helping me.
Yeah, and getting vulnerable at the same time, because when you're willing to receive feedback, honest feedback, you're being vulnerable.
But what's the harm, right? What's the downside of that? And I used to think there was. I won't look as smart as the other person. Hell no.
No, you're going to learn something.
Yeah. There's no downside to that.
It's a big benefit.
Well, and actually what I found, and I probably said this in a previous podcast, when I find that when I am vulnerable, the most vulnerable I am is when people start drawing near to me. They want to come and they want to offer more.
Yeah, of course.
It's just such a gift.
Well, what's the takeaway from this, Scott? So as we're talking through this subject, which, because I feel like we could go on and on, there's so many things that I think even from when I'm younger I could talk about as an experience share. But we're getting up here on time. So what's a big takeaway for our listeners? What did you learn versus where somebody can access something greater at this point?
Just like you said earlier, the things that I learned about being independent, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and doing all those things that I learned are still valuable. They're still good. But I don't want to lead with those all the time. I don't want to look like the most powerful person in the room. I don't want to look like the smartest person in the room. I want to be open for critique, feedback. And I do that by not sitting around with my arms folded like this or scowling at people like that, but smiling at them and asking them to tell me more. I mean, it does several things. One, I get information. That doesn't mean the information is always right either. Don't just because somebody gives you feedback doesn't mean you have to take it.
Yeah.
But I'm suggesting that we listen to it because it can only make me smarter. It can either reinforce some of the things I already believe or make me smarter, one or the other, and neither one's a bad thing.
So my biggest takeaway, or I would say my biggest suggestion is exactly what you just said at the end there, which is just listen. Yeah. And I think you'll be blown away at really even the people closest to you, the amount of wisdom that they can impart if you listen to it. And I'll leave you with this anecdote.
But they're harder to listen to. The closer they are to you, the
incredibly hard to listen to. That's why
I know you so well, and you would get defensive easier.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting open your mind and your heart to really listening to it, because it is sometimes the most incredible feedback that you could possibly get. And I was just going to leave with this anecdote. And I was up in Oregon several years ago for a class reunion, and somebody that I'd gone to school with, she said, "You know what I remember about you, Vince?" And my immediate response was that I was an asshole, because I was masking in a way, right? Because I didn't want to hear what she had to say. And I just, I responded before I just listened. And then I stopped myself and just listened. And she said that your family was at every one of your events.
Wow.
And it was incredibly powerful.
Isn't that kind of the opposite of asshole?
Yeah. And I said, and she goes, I don't remember that about anybody else, but your family was at every game, every event, everything that you had going on, your family was there. And that was incredible. That was incredible for me to hear. It was hard for me to hear at the moment. And then I remember, oh shoot, those are the people closest to me.
Yeah.
And I have the most to learn from them if I really start listening and opening up.
Yeah. I have a similar but different anecdote that just happened. Actually, I did a speaking event for EO Inland Empire called Relentless. And it was one of my former forum mates happened to be one of the guys running it, Todd Warham. And after my talk, he came up to me with a group of others. And he said, "That is not what I expected to hear from you. What I expected to hear from you was who I was 10 years ago." Right? And it was meant to be a sarcastic, backhanded compliment, but I took it as such a compliment because of how much I had changed. What he was trying to say is, you were an asshole. Honestly. And it's a good friend of mine, but I took it as a huge compliment because the transition that took place in those 10 years since he remembered.
That's cool.
Was really cool.
Powerful, right?
Yeah.
And you were in the right frame to listen and hear that.
Yeah, to not get defensive about being the jerk. No, Todd, I did that because I was smarter than you. I was trying to help you. I was trying to figure your life out for you.
No.
I could have acted like that, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the frame. It was the frame that says, you see the difference. That's cool.
Thanks. Is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, we appreciate you listening and hanging tight with us. Excited for season 5. We've got a lot more to come. A lot of really fresh new guests for this season that I think will have some exciting topics for you. So stay tuned for more podcasts.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.